If you're watching this down the road and you're seeing this, go ahead and skip ahead a couple minutes. We're going to give some time for folks to jump on, and so yeah, this might be boring for another minute or two, but you guys know how that thing goes. And seeing some folks jumping in, please give me give me some words. Let me know that you can hear us all right, and make sure that the comments are working. I'm gonna jump over and check everything. It looks like we are getting out on the internet. All right. Thank you. Charles is saying the sound is good. Awesome. Well, they can hear me. That's good. That's always a good thing.
Very good.
Well, um, sweet. We got some folks jumping on. So while we're getting rolling, I will say I know a lot of folks probably curious on the outcome or on the take from the legal team on court this morning. I've been talking to Christy. She's going to get something written up to get posted. We're not going to be able to do any big video to get questions and stuff like that with the 4th of July weekend coming up. So we're trying to figure out the next game plan there. But she is going to write up some thoughts and share. The big takeaway was that it was a good morning. Some interesting things were revealed, as seems to be the case throughout this whole process. But yeah, well, let's jump in, Mr. Fred Zachary.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to I guess the Advanced Etowah podcasting studio. It's I just want to start with how crazy is all of this that seems to that's transpired with this whole rendering plant thing.
It could be crazier.
Don't say that.
It could really be crazier, but it has sparked the interest of the broader community, and it's brought to surface some issues that we need to resolve anyway. So if we're going to do it through rendering, let's do it through rendering. Let's deal with the water system and the structural system infrastructure of the city and the county. Let's deal with bringing quality jobs that pay good money and do not dish up the environment. Let's look at the planning,
Right.
which we haven't had a city plan in over 40 years, strategic city plan in over 40 years. So we're talking about just being in the dark.
Yeah.
With what we're doing, flying by the seat of our pants as planners and folk who are supposed to deliver to municipalities growth, progress, and development. And
Right.
it's just simply not happening because we're using the old boys network.
Well, so I've definitely been saying, and we've had, well, I mean, when this first started, guys like David Chadwick that said I had no idea it was bad, as bad as it is, and frankly, I'm sorry that I haven't been paying enough attention, and I think that's the way a lot of folks feel. But I know from talking to you briefly here this evening, and then hearing from Carolyn, you've known about these issues for a while, and you've been fighting the fight, and so I want to get into some of that, guys. When we're getting started here, nothing's off the table for some discussion. Yeah, we'll talk some about the rendering plant, and I'd love to get your perspectives and the stuff you've talked about. So, just for some context, guys, I didn't really get to meet you over at the church the other day. Just a lot of moving parts there with Coosa River Keepers. I thought it was a good event, a lot of good information put out by Justin, and there's a lot of us that, I mean, I didn't know Justin until this past November when all of this started. So we're all making new friends, and I've enjoyed that aspect of things. But the water problem issue that occurs in East Gadsden, the infrastructure issue we definitely need to dive into that. I honestly I had no idea. I live over in Rainbow City, and I guess I, just living my life and not hearing a lot of those issues. But it was definitely eye opening, and to hear some of the residents and some of the issues and some of the photos. So we'll dive into some of that. Want to talk a little bit about who you are and your background, and I guess I'd say why anyone might want to listen to what you have to say.
Okay.
And so, guys, whatever questions y'all have got, this is kind of can be a group conversation. Otherwise, I'm probably going to ask a few questions, and from what I'm seeing, I'm probably going to sit here and just listen, which is it's a lot better. I think I usually get people telling me, "Hey, shut up and let Christy talk," or so. So that's enough out of me. So let's start with. So you were born in Gadsden.
I'm a native.
Native.
Yes, grew up here, educated in the public schools. Went on to receive a bachelor's degree from the University of Alabama in 1974, 75, I can't remember. One 74 or 75, and then got a master's degree in public administration. Moved on to Washington D.C. and stayed there for a little over 3 decades. Worked out of the mayor's office for economic development and a number of other administrative positions for the city. So I know the financial development
Right.
really well.
Okay.
And since I've been back in 2004, I operated as the administrative director for Quality of Life Health Systems when I first came back for a while. So, Gadsden is a part of my heart,
Right.
even though I've lived outside of Gadsden longer than I've lived inside of Gadsden.
Right. Right.
But it's still a part of my heart. This is a beautiful place that needs a few upgrades. We need to look out for the housing that our folks are living in and upgrade those. Everybody can't live on the river or on the mountain, but everybody can have a good quality
Absolutely.
of life living in a decent place where they want to live and
Right.
can afford to live. But that has just sort of winked its eye at Gadsden. We have a homeless population here that people pretend that doesn't exist. As a matter of fact, I was at a meeting. This was right before the pandemic, and that issue came up, and folks said, "No, no, no, no. We don't have a homeless issue, but we do. We don't have a health issue, but we do. Of the 12 county cluster that we're in, we have more mental health issues than any of those other 12 counties. So we have to look at some things, and whether it's the water,
Right.
or the lack of water, or something that's going on that is affecting us health wise. So that's why I say we don't need another environmental issue, whether it's a facade of an environmental issue that does not cause any deleterious effect on our health, but we just can't go outside and breathe,
Right.
or whether it really is an issue that we need to come together around as a community. And we were talking about water last week.
Right.
In certain neighborhoods, in 11th Street, Collie Homes, and 6th Street in East Gadsden, where you have a runoff from the landfill over there into the backyards of people who built some very nice homes over there. It is the Gadsden is developed around racial lines. Everything nasty, as a rule, has been put, and that's why you see some black people coming and say, "Oh well, they didn't worry about me when they were doing this or doing that." But Goodyear,
Well, now not some in particular. A city council woman said that when this whole thing started. So,
but let me straighten out her comments. Goodyear was built in 1929, to my knowledge. There was no community there when Goodyear was built. The community was built around Goodyear. There was no really stinky odors coming out of Goodyear. It smelled like rubber. And I worked there for a minute, so I know the smell. The councilwoman, and I'm going to call her name, Mrs. Tolles, is anti-citizen. It's a us against them from everything I've seen about her approach, is they coming at us, so we're going to go after them. We're not going to sign these papers. We're not going to promote anything progressive because they're threatening us. I mean, this has been raised to a level. The temperature has been raised to a level such that I would never have imagined with a city council and a mayor. Mayor don't know why the people came here, and the city council didn't understand, and Pilgrim's Pride not giving up a whole lot of answers. I mean, I hadn't been to the court, but it's very simple. If a community does not want a business, for whatever reasons, the legitimacy of the business is diminished because the folk don't want them there.
Right.
You know, so you need, as an elected official, you need to weigh that to say, well, I'll be back next time, and they'll forget, vote for me anyway. Or you need to look after the common good for the constituency, which the constituency has already recognized that this is not a plus for our community.
Yeah. So sorry, I sidetracked you from
Okay.
the racial. That's probably going to happen a lot. So playing on the racial divide in Gadsden, and
it's profitable. It's profitable for people like Robert Avery. It's profitable for people like Sherman Guyton. It's profitable for people who are elected to the legislative districts, because it's profitable for the Civil Service Commission, because they don't have to deal with how difficult it is and how heavy a lift it is to have diversity in a community that works for all the people. That's a big lift.
Yeah.
You know, just to have a group of old guys over here and a group of young guys over here, you know some of the feedback you're going to get. But when you mix the old guys, the young guys, the black guys, the brown guys, and all those guys together, and you shake it up so that you're trying to get the best possible production, that's called diversity. And everybody should be for that.
Right.
You know.
Oh yeah.
So,
you got to have folks that represent the folks. I mean,
And-
that's the whole idea of our democratic government and the structure of America. Yeah.
and
absolutely.
know what they're doing. You know,
Right.
you need people with whatever diversity, and diversity comes in many facets. But you need to know what you're doing.
Right.
You need a personnel director who knows what they do. We need a recreation director who knows what she's doing.
Right.
You know, so
I mean, running a community, I mean, just that's it. It's not easy.
It's not. It's difficult.
And I mean, I have minor experience. I was on a staff for a naval air station, which was like we had our own water treatment plant and all that kind of stuff. But probably the biggest thing was I served for an admiral who was in charge of a carrier strike group, and you know, it's funny how much that relates. So we've got a bunch of ships, thousands and thousands of people, all diverse people, all trying to do, you know, and that I feel like that gives me a small glimpse into what it would be like to actually run a community. Yeah. And it's not easy. I mean, there's a lot of work, and it should not be something that you want to do to profit. Like, you need to be doing it so that you know, your desire is to make the community better.
Not only should you not want to do it to profit, you shouldn't want to do it to add to your resume letter. You shouldn't want to do it to think you're an important gal or guy around the community. You should want to do it because you really want to serve people in such a way that when you found them, you take them or help them get to a different place, better place. And that's what service is about. Most of our city leaders don't even live in Gadsden. So, and I'm not knocking them not living in Gadsden, but how can you be so into something that you don't think enough of to live in? And now the housing stock is crazy, but that's another thing. You knock down all of the starter homes. In other communities, they take the houses and rehab them and let young people buy them. In this community, they knock them down. Well, see, the average age of the Gadsden City Council probably is around 70. You got only 2 people up there that's younger than 70. So you're looking at ageism.
We're not being ageist here
No,
now.
but you're looking at people. I'm old,
Right.
so I can say these things. When you're looking at people a certain age who have not reinvented themselves
Right.
to be contemporary. Then you're looking at old folks who
Right.
don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, the world has changed drastically. And I'm seeing some comments about innovation, and I'll get to some questions here in just a minute. But I mean, the world is drastically different now. I mean, post pandemic, but I mean, even just the opportunities that are out there. Now just a small glimpse of things that I think people should be thinking about. Post pandemic, you got tons and tons of companies now that have already they've figured out. Wait, I can have a better quality of life and a better production from employees that work remotely.
Right.
Well, how many? And so I sell boats for a living, right? So I deal with a lot of folks that like their hobby, their passion in life, the thing they live for Friday for is to get their boat, drive it up here from Birmingham, jump on Neely Henry and go fishing or go play on the water. Well, the only reason they do that is because they got to live in Birmingham because that's where the good jobs are. That's what affords them. Well, what happens when all of a sudden now I can work remotely? What does that mean for a community like ours? But you got to understand, I mean, how the technology, what is in the realm of possible, what's coming, that's just a reality of. It'd be great to see a lot more younger folks,
It
but I
would.
know
It
I've
really
heard
would.
a lot of a lot of parents that are just encouraging their kids, like, if you really want to go make something yourself,
Get out of here.
get out of here, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's no way to have a community.
Well, it's not, and then technology has robbed us in a lot of places. As it advanced us, it dipped into the tax pool
Yep.
revenues,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so you're looking at smaller revenues because of technology. Some people
Yep.
are trying to
Yep.
tap into it there, but technology brings with this a dragon,
Right.
as well as a butterfly,
Absolutely.
and so you
Absolutely.
have to be able to balance and nuance this technology to our advantage. We're not doing it. We got a river, man, running through downtown Gadsden. And it's just a river running through downtown Gadsden. Other places have made those rivers repositories of profit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can't you can't sell being on the water. You can't sell that on the internet.
No, you cannot. You
And
really cannot. Mm-mm.
that's definitely all right. Well, let's see. Let me read through. Trying to find some. All right. So I see Taylor Clark. Hold on. Let me make this a little bit bigger so folks can see it. And all right. So Taylor said, I believe two things are pulling Gadsden down: backwards thinking leadership that avoids innovation, historic and current inequities that impact the Black community and women who make up a large portion of the workforce. Do you see us addressing both of these things after next year's election?
Well, it's hard to say, but I will say that I do wish we would address these things because 54%, 50 to 50, 54 to 57% of the voters are women. So women have a lion's share of being the voting population, but are not pulled into the boardrooms and given some of the I mentioned the 26 and 0 for no minorities on the mayor's staff. There's only one or two women. So that speaks volume for where we are shackled into the yesteryear when the economic development formula was no unions and keeping folk at low wages and making sure that they couldn't travel or go too many places because they didn't make enough money to do it. And the mills and the plants came and exploited the folk who were in these positions. And it's still a little bit like that, but not as much because we don't have very much manufacturing here.
Right.
And so where are we looking for development? I mean, is Gaston just a stepchild that you can send? I'm going back to a stinky rendering plant to, and we should be appreciative. Should our folk have met this in another way to find a location that was appropriate? And it's going to stink all over the place, but to find a location that was more appropriate for that kind of business. And
Right.
so we have to be, again, people who understand the need for diversity. You have to go back to that. And when you get people talking about trying to make, and I'm gonna stay on the render for just a second, trying to make that a race thing, like fearless president of the city council, uh, that begins to show the ignorance, because the air we breathe cannot be separated out once something toxic or awful smelling is in it.
Right.
It's going to curse across the land, and you're going to breathe it, whether you are council president or the mayor or whomever, one of the council members. You have to understand. You have to look beyond the ignorance of, I call racism private, your privacy, where you have to be public. You have to be a person that looks after the general interests of the public.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely been one of the, I don't know, seems like softball issues of this is that this is not something that, and there's a lot of folks that it's not going to bother me on my side of town, and you know the reality is, and we go back to the flooding issue and the poor infrastructure that we have, and you know, what are we doing to fix those things, and what do we think is going to happen if we dump another 612,000 gallons of water a day into that system? You know, okay, so even if the smell by some chance doesn't reach over this way, if the pollutants in the air that you and I aren't just talking about early on, we had doctors that you know from our local area that came in and gave us some good education on exactly what the risks were of even the clean particulates that are still in the air. Right. There's still lots of stuff coming out of that. You know, so this is going to affect a lot more. You know, I've heard folks, hey, maybe in Etowah it's not going to affect you as much, or even out in Altoona. But
what is as much?
Yeah, exactly. what is as much? And you know, to be honest, I mean, one of the things that you look at the track record of this company, of Pilgrim's Pride. You know, if you do any little research, I think I just heard somebody did the math, and they paid out over like $1 billion in fines in Q1 of 2021. $1 billion in fines. They've pled guilty to bribery. I mean, like, I really that will, them being in our community, and we're seeing that even in the way this litigation is occurring, and how they're trying to drive the show. It would appear. I mean, what does everybody think is going to happen if they set up shop in our community,
or if they don't? I mean, you lose 35 jobs. And the city doesn't get to collect the occupational fee from 35 people. Right. Of all 34 right. 35 are covered. If we are thinking progressively about using that waterway, about using the terrain that cascades down the mountains and so forth in this area, about the wildlife and so forth, we're thinking progressively about doing that and putting that formula into development, then we would be thinking differently. Since I've been back, the thoughts were about a gambling casino. The state legislature blocked that back in the day. They had bought land and stuff that they later turned into a mega site. And all of that, the mega site is supposed to attract 2,000 jobs, 2,000 to 3,000 jobs, and to be an automotive something. I mean, the dream seems so juvenile and so incarcerated, because they are captured and can't get out to breathe freely and do what progressive people do. And if you put progressive people together, they can bring progress. And I'm not talking about new dancing clubs and all that. I don't consider that progress. What I do consider progress is advancing this piece of property that we call Gaston to a position where, if your child wants to come and stay here, situate themselves in this as a bedroom community and drive somewhere else to work, or if they want a job here, that the diversity of jobs will be here for them. Everybody don't want the big city. And so
I'm one of them.
well, it's a lot of people don't like the traffic and all that stuff in the big city, but that's where the jobs are.
Yep.
But it's almost the same as it was when I left here back in 1969. I had to go somewhere else to find a decent job. Wasn't a job for me. I didn't want to teach, and I didn't want to work at Goodyear forever. So there was no job for me, no management position, and so I always had my eyes on management and administration. So I mean, I don't want to work too hard, number one, but it is incredibly important that we embrace diversity in all of its nectar across the board to make sure that we do something different with this village in the next election.
Okay. Well, and that's we've been making a big push, guys. If you've been thinking about running, we need new blood. I mean, I'm only half joking when I say we need some different families, because it just seems like we've had a lot of the same names. I mean, how many mayors has Gadsden actually had? It's not that many.
Not a whole lot, but all of them have been in real estate. Every last one of them,
Really?
except for one, have been in real estate. They've all been land developers and real estate people.
Well, that's you need operators. You need CEOs that understand being the CEO of a company that is the community. Let's see here. Why do you think our leadership will not put a stop to the rendering plant?
Well, because there's a famous line from a movie that says, "Watch the money." I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I take that to heart. Watch the money. There's nobody that could be begging for the Stinkville, for Gadsden to become Stinkville, that didn't have some Purian interest other than bringing Pilgrim's Pride together.
Well, now, in all fairness, they guarantee that it's not going to stink because they've got the latest and greatest technology, a never before built, piece of technology that will keep it from stinking. And apparently, they'll be able to keep 100 trucks from stinking. So,
well, if you believe that, I got some fire I want to sell you. It's just not true. And doing the research, and I've done a lot of research to see, there's no community in America that's really, really happy about rendering a Tala or any of those. And there's so many different kinds of rendering plants, but they all carry generally the same thing: a disdain for odor, buzzards flocking, bugs everywhere, and broke down caucus trucks with the stench of death everywhere. So they all have the same elements and characteristics.
well, all right. Let me jump through here. Let's see what Reba Stanley. Which Reba, by the way, thank you so much for the play-by-play in court. Reba's been a champ in our Facebook group. She was sitting in the courtroom today. Texting away and posting in the comments on Facebook hey, Christy's talking about this now. And so I was at work, of course, diligently working. I wasn't distracted by Facebook, but fortunately I do Facebook for a living at work. So it works out well. But yeah, thank you so much, Reba. And I know everybody was very appreciative of that. But Reba was asking, what have the communities done themselves to improve their neighborhoods? What have you seen around Gadsden, around Etowah County?
Well, in my community, and I pride myself in living in a very urban community that there is like a Snaggletooth community where every other space, every other lot is vacant, where they've torn out houses instead of trying to revamp them. There are a number of things that the community has done. But when you live in a desperate community where there are not that's controlled a lot by what the city is supposed to do. Let's look at recreation, and recreation is real important to me because that gives the kids somewhere to go.
Yeah.
There was a performance, a video thing going on last week, week before last, where these folks were given permission to have the event, but the recreation department head did not allow them toilets. So they were not able to go inside the gym over at Carver and use the toilet because she didn't have anybody who wanted to work over there, and there were no keys. So to me, that puts the community in a difficult position. You look at when you're asking for some return on your tax investment, and you have to go before city council. You have to do 2 weeks before you go, and Mrs. Tolles has to determine if it's a subject she wants to hear. It's all but shut down the voice of the people. And when you start to look at communities that have been jagged communities that have been just so depressed and so out of touch with the realities, and a large portion of seniors who have retired, and you have fixed income communities. I think communities are holding up very well in the older parts of town. Green Pastures is where I grew up. It looks fairly decent over there. You know, people have done their share to make sure the yards and the houses look good. Of course, you always have somebody that don't keep up, but we are in a position as a community where the haves and the have-nots are exponentially great. When you start to talking about less than $30,000 a year medium income for a family of four, we have to take out the folks in country club. We have to take out the folks on the mountain, and many of them are in the same category. But for the most part, they are in a different category, economic strata. So when we start to looking at that, we look at the schools. The schools also suffer, even though we have a great superintendent now. Schools are inherently the vehicle by which we're going to get out this trap. So just not just your Brown, but all the schools need to perform, and we need to demand excellence from our schools and our teachers and the people who work in the schools. So we are in a place where the question should not, I think, be what have the communities done for themselves. A question really should be what could the communities do for themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think the greater issue that we're having in America right now is there's a lot of, I mean, the national level politics. And I know in our opposition group there are a few folks that made some comments about the president, and that's all everybody talks about now. And the reality is that I think a lot of it, and I think the pandemic exponentially increased the fact that we need to get back to community.
Right.
Like the national level, the federal government's not going to come fix our community. And the city council is not going to come and necessarily fix a lot of the things that are in your neighborhood. And we shouldn't really expect the government. Maybe it comes from, almost 20 years now of service to the federal government and the Navy. I'd really like to not have the government. I'd love to have them do as little as possible, because they're pretty much bound to spend money in ways that doesn't need to be spent. So getting back to the local level of trying to fix things, really getting back to, getting back to, hey, does my neighbor have toilet paper? Because we got a toilet paper shortage. I think is a real eye-opening concept.
Or does my neighbor have lights?
Yeah.
Or water. We live in situations where people look to be doing fairly well who are in dire straits.
Yeah.
But we don't commit ourselves to being concerned about our neighbor. It's about me. So one of the things you just said, though, I don't necessarily believe in a welfare state or the city or the state or the feds taking care of things. But the feds and the city and the state take your money,
Mm-hmm.
and they ought to be obligated to reinvest your money into your community. You know,
Right.
and it shouldn't be no grandiose scheme about what they want to see, but it should be some local board or local folks who bring together the terms of what they want to see invested in their community. That doesn't happen.
Right. Well, and I know, I mean, at the federal level, it's a very, very big, very complex game, but it gets easier and easier, and it's, I think, easier for, I guess, more average folks like me to understand when you're talking about budgets and what you do with money. I mean, a lot of it becomes a lot more basic when you get down to the local level, and it really shouldn't be that hard.
Well, let's talk about something about local budgets. In a local budget, you have a line item for encouraging folks to stay on the longevity pay. Over $1 million in longevity pay. There is no dearth of people that you're looking for that cannot work in Gadsden, especially at those, I call them white jobs. Please forgive me, but they are jobs that black folks never held. So that's how I give them that name. Those jobs are protected, and folks stay on them and on them and on them forever because they get additional money up to a certain amount percentage for years, for the graduation of years, for 10, for 15, for 20 more years. Well, you've been on a job for 20 years. When you gonna get off? When you gonna graduate to something else? I mean, I understand a lot of people are very young, but we're looking at people who are 40 and 50 who've been on that job for 20 years and who stay on it for another 20, 25 years to advance that retirement and to have that longevity pay. I'm not knocking people for trying to level out their life, but don't do it on public dollars.
That's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of folks. That is definitely, and that conversation could go in a lot of different ways for sure.
It has.
All right, let me get back into the questions. Sorry, guys. I'm just enjoying the conversation. Shannon says, as truthful as Mr. Zachary is willing to speak with us, can he speak to other members of the media as well, maybe to enlighten more of Gadsden citizens? And I'm not 100% sure what she's getting at with that, but.
Well, I have a program. I'm a manager of a radio station.
WMGJ.
WMGJ. So I have a program Monday through Friday from 12 to 12:30 called Introspection. It's been going for 8 or 9 years now. We cover just about all of the topics as they relate to local issues, and we cover them from different perspectives. The Gadsden Times is owned by, I think, the New York Times. So the local news does not, it comes in, but it's more about crime reporting and who busted into whose car and got, there are no items of news to me that represent the value of the community that I ever see in the Gadsden Times or any of the other newspapers. We don't have a television station here.
Right.
So you miss that part of it. And the other radio stations, we are a radio station that was developed around community events. The founder, Mr. Floyd O'Donnell, developed the programming around community. We do the food drive every year and got 15, 20 tons of food this year on virtual. We do the United Negro College Fund Radiothon, the Sickle Cell Radiothon. I mean, a number of things that impact our community, but all communities. We raise more tons of food than any other organization in the county. So when we start to talk about what others will publicize, you have to get into those people and sit at the table with them and get to know them and understand why they don't see what's interesting and important to me as such.
All right. Well, there's definitely, I'm in violent agreement with with a lot of the issues with the media. I think that's one of the things that has gotten us to the surrendering plant thing is just I guess the best way I put it is it's the difficulty to be informed.
Yeah.
You know, most of us, we want to go about our lives and we're not going to spend every waking minute focused on every issue that's going on in our community. Most folks, you know, they want to go do an honest day's work. They want to come home, play with the kids, go to softball or go to soccer or, you know, go do something fun on the weekends and live their life. I know in through this process, it is very hard for to set out to actually figure out what's going on in our community, to figure out just how the government runs, who is doing what are all the different boards. So if I've had that much difficulty, then you know I assume that most people it's just a lot of effort, and
It's a lot
when
of effort.
when you don't have a media source that is providing that information.
Well, just listen to WMGJ Introspection,
All right.
12 to 12:30.
Okay.
I feed the audience information. That's it. I'm not going to try to tell you how to vote or who to vote for, but I'm going to give you the concerns that you should have about certain candidates, whether they're mayor or president, you know. And so we are. You will probably be here. I probably won't see the tremendous change that's going to come with the demographic flip. Uh, there's going to be a time in the next 2 decades where the majority will become the minority. That only means it's more minorities than there are majorities now. I don't know if anything else is going to change or not, but I do know this. I do know that at some point America, Alabama, Gadsden, Etowah County is going to have to reconcile with the problem of race. Somewhere. Whether it's over a rendering plant or dirty water, we're going to have to come to terms.
That's a really hard and uncomfortable conversation
It
for a lot of
is.
folks to have.
It really is. You know, but why? We're all from the same die lot. Why?
That's a good question. You know, and I mean, not just on that issue, but so many. It seems so hard for people to just sit down and have a conversation about anything that they disagree on.
Well, women are not unequal. Women have every opportunity in the world. They can smoke, they can drink, they can do whatever they want to do now. They can even vote. But so women are not in any dilemma about being treated equal. But when you start to looking at the pay scale for women,
yeah,
then you discover what it's about. It's money. When you start to looking at money and you start looking at the vote, those are the two cachets for which America is founded on. So if you don't have the money and you don't have the vote or both, you're in trouble.
Well, that's a lot of heavy stuff to go through. So let me shift to something that I think everybody can jump on board with for a discussion. So $24 million, $26 million, City of Gadsden's getting. If they called you in and said, "How should we spend this money?" What are your thoughts?
I would first say get your infrastructure together, and that's probably not enough money to do that. But at least get the water, the sewer mains, and those things cleaned out, and get that together. And then the second thing I would say get what we need to do as a city to make it look better. If you come in from Birmingham or if you come in from Atlanta, Gadsden gets very ugly before you get into Gadsden. It didn't used to be that way. I would invest some of that money in planning beautiful plants all up the borders and down the streets and things, and making sure that they were well taken care of. I would invest some of that money into art pieces or for artscapes for the community. I think that a community that does not have a vision about art cannot find itself walking clearly into the future. So there's just a number of things that the way that the 24 million would be spent before the check was cashed, because there are some things that we absolutely need to do, and one of them is in some communities there are no libraries, so there are no reading rooms. Why don't we have a reading room in each community where there's not a physical library? And I know everybody's electronic, but there is something very special about going, sitting in the library, reading a book or magazine or pulling it down and looking at it and learning the system. All of that has to do with quality of life.
Well, so quality life.
Yes.
Well, like you said, I think a lot of the infrastructure is probably going to eat up a lot of that.
All the money. Yes.
So that being said, what do you think that money is going to get spent
on? I don't know. Somebody, a beach house or mountain cottage or
and you're throwing the zingers out tonight. I love it.
The money finds itself drifting to not the greatest need, but to the person who has the greatest stranglehold on the distribution.
Right. Well, and so getting back to a plan and actually having a plan for how to spend that money, and you talked about, really that money pretty much should be spent before it's even here on things that we know that it needs to get spent on. And one of the valuable things that I learned from a guy that I worked for in the Navy, and we'll talk about, I promise, bear with me, this relates, because, in the Navy, still the same type of governmental, like, if you don't spend it this year, they're not going to give you as much next year. That's the way we do math. It's not a very good business model. But one thing was that we always had a plan when I worked with this guy or worked for this guy. It was, we've got a plan for the things that are broken and what we need money on. And so he gained the reputation that when he went up the chain and asked for money, they knew that he knew what he needed the money for and he had a plan for it. And that definitely, you spoke to 40 years since we've had an actual plan in the community. Right. Spending that $24 million, $26 million, whatever that number is, doesn't seem like it should be all that difficult. We should need to have a big panel of people, a bunch of folks from the community coming in and making sure they want to be at the table when those discussions are had. That plan already, like, we already know what we need to do. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on a master plan as a county and ideas on how we could go about doing that? Or should it be letting Gadsden lead the county, whether it's restructuring the government or, do you think we can get government, the different municipalities to cooperate?
They cooperated with raising the sales tax 1 cent to 10 cents, so then thumb 2 cents, so they can collude when they want to for a little less than nefarious reasons, but they do collude, and work together against the people. But when we start to look at the issues, a plan is definitely needed between the county and the city and the multiple municipalities that we have here in Etowah County. Etowah County is a very small county. It's only 55 miles wide. And so we need to look at how do we, right now they're negotiating between the county and the city the price for keeping prisoners at the county. There are other issues where we can be more focused on not duplicating service and not worrying about who's going to get the credit, and it's just so many things. And when we get to the point that we have cooperative competition that leads us down the right road, we'll be much better off.
All right. Well, All right, let me jump through, and if you've got thoughts, any points that you want to make, I feel like I've neglected some of the group. Um, it's hard to keep up sometimes, though.
Let me mention something that's going on now too. There have been
Yeah,
two meetings with the bond people and the school board and the city to renegotiate the bond that they used to build the new high school.
yeah,
Well, Mrs. Tolles, from what I understand, and some members of the city have sort of thrown up challenges and roadblocks. The city would, the school district would save $1 million if they renegotiate, and so would the city.
right.
But because I don't know.
And that was you're talking about because I believe Thomas Worthy brought that up at the city council 3 weeks
About
ago.
3 weeks ago, yeah,
And the answer was basically, well, because of this big $24 million, I don't have time. That's just not a priority to me to worry about
a
how to go
billion
about doing
dollars,
that.
right?
Yeah,
But you're saving the city and the school district $1 million. $1 million is a lot of money, whether you want to believe it or not. And if you can cut into a loan's interest and get $2 million saved in total, then why don't you do that?
yeah. I've never owned a business, but I mean, it seems like a good business practice to hire somebody for $30,000 to go do the paperwork for you, so you can save 1 million or 2 million.
Well, they probably going to hire somebody for $1 million or $2 million to do the paperwork. But because see, that's anyway,
That's called cynicism, people.
that's called truth.
Oof. Probably won't get any arguments there. Yeah, that's sometimes that's how the math works out.
Yeah, it does. The greasy wheel gets the grease.
So educate me more on that bond. So that's a bond. The school system. It's a bond between the school system and the city
And the bonding company.
and the bonding
Yeah,
company.
there is another bonding company, I think, or they may be the same one, who wants to, because of interest rates right now, you could refinance, and that's what's going to happen if they ever allow it to happen. And both parties on the end that's financing the bond would gain money.
So why don't you? I mean, why do you think they're not? They don't want to do it. I mean, I don't buy the whole. Oh well, I don't have time to do the paperwork. That seems. I mean, there's got to be something more to.
Well, let's see. I want to keep this above. There is a member of the council who really wanted to be the superintendent of education, uh, and so that didn't happen.
Mm,
And so there's always something adverse about the school district. They tried to take away the extra money for reading programs and do all kinds of other things with the funding to establish a nonprofit for a member of the city council who sits there now, and she's just very hard on the school system.
hmm.
For whatever reason, it doesn't make sense because the school system is at the heart of whatever we get done
Right.
here.
Right.
So so you might want to have a talk with her and ask her why is she so. Some of your listeners, why is she so hard on the school system? The only one we got.
Yeah. Hey, I'd be more than happy. We got a couple of city council folks that came on and talked with us
Okay.
when this first started, and then the lawyer told them they couldn't. And I don't think anybody's tried since then. So
Clicking the heels that happen.
yeah, I know. I know Jason Wilson he has definitely said that he'd be more than happy to come back on and talk. And that's something that because I know he's a big proponent of developing the waterfront and building a different economy
Right.
in our community. And he definitely has struck me as somebody that has put a lot of thought uh, into Gadsden and what is the potential of Gadsden and what could it be. and has thought outside the box, which, that innovation, progressive thinking, is good to have. All right. So I'm seeing a comment about the two IDAs from Reba. I'm gonna phrase my own question out of that. Have you been following along that basically now the judge ruled that the IDA for the city of the Gadsden Etowah IDA is considered a private company that is contracted with the city of Gadsden. Um, so from your background, that's very applicable to community and governmental structure. So how does that sound to you?
Well, that's not unusual here because the water department is a separate entity, private from the city of Gaston, where they get to make their appointments. It is a good old boys fix because the county. I was on the county economic development board, and it was collapsed because uh, the county didn't want the state not to send jobs because of their IDA and Gaston's IDA and get confused. That wasn't really what it was about. But anyway, it was sad when it happened, and they were promoting the mega site. And I guess they still are. I got a text or email from somebody today asking me to talk about the mega site. Well, hell, you put me off the board and shut it down. Why am I going to talk about it?
Mm.
Through with that.
Well, I mean the whole idea. So Hugh Stump from the tourism. He and I become friends through various ways. We do a lot of work the last couple of years with promoting the bass fishing and all that kind of stuff. But we sat down and I learned some stuff with him. He came on and talked to us, explained how they work, and from a functionality, yeah, it's the Gadsden and Etowah tourism, but he functions as Etowah. Right. Which back to how can all these little minor, these municipalities work together? It seems like the IDA, a Gadsden IDA, who are they looking out for? Like, why would we not do away with a Gadsden IDA if we've developed a county IDA or economic, whatever you want to call it, that's going to perform those functions? And again, back to the military guy in me going, well, if you've got two entities that are trying to do the same thing, you're broken from the get go.
And you don't have any real plan about. It takes everybody in this village to come to the table really to make this work, because part of what's going on is that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and the left hand doesn't agree with what the right hand is doing.
So or the left hand's trying to take away from the right hand.
And so you got a guy over here, and I'm not knocking folks making money, making 90, 100,000. You got another one over who won't give up his job. You got another one over here making 80, 90,000. Those are high-end jobs in Gadsden. So they're not going to give up the job for the betterment of the community. It's all about the me. And once we get over that trough, then we will be able to come together as a community. A plan sort of keeps a lot of that out.
Right.
If it's scripted and written into a plan, then you don't have to deal with as much of the mess as you do when you got all of these folk who went to Gaston High and went to Elmer Sampson and still don't like each other, trying to run the county and the city.
See, I guess that's just not even a thought for me because I graduated from Dreher High School in Columbia, South Carolina. So none of these schools around here mean all that much. Although my daughter, I've got one at Southside, and one that's starting at Rainbow Middle. So I guess it's starting to become. I'm starting to get a little territorial about that kind of stuff. But, but it is funny to see.
But that's kids. You're talking about kids. I'm talking about 70, 60, 70, 75-year-old men.
Yeah, I don't know why you still keep talking about that. I mean, I'm an Auburn grad and you're an Alabama grad, and we're able to sit here and have a conversation, which is actually fairly remarkable in the state of Alabama. So
Yeah, it really is.
that's been one of the worst parts of this whole thing is a bunch of the Chadwicks and Christy Knowles are all Alabama graduates.
Yeah.
So I've had to really watch my back around this group.
Well, I tell you, for the person who asked about how, see, intellectual impotence breeds something less than excellence, and so we are suffering at the county and the city and the state intellectual impotence.
Mm. So we got a. This is a good question. Has Mr. Zachary thought about running for mayor?
Oh Lord, no.
That goes along. There was another comment of Mr. Zachary is very smart, so maybe that's proof you're too smart to go run for mayor.
Number one, I'm too old. I think my mind is still pretty good, but I don't want to be sitting up nowhere nibbling on cheese bits and stuff with a bunch of people I don't like every other day. See that's
awesome.
That's how you weed out the folk who should be in those positions. I'm not interested in a title,
right?
And I don't see myself as being tied in enough to bring anything special other than my little intellect. You know, I don't know the folks in Washington and don't want to know them. Don't want to give up my time to do that. Budgets, I do know. I do know if you deconstruct Gaston's budget, it is a lot of waste. And at the county, you know, that's called the nepotism corner of Alabama. Everybody's a cousin or something who works for the county. So when we start to look at the reality, it's a whole lot got to be cleaned up.
Right.
You know, you cannot mop a floor with a dirty mop.
Well, you can. It just won't ever get clean.
That's right. So, no, I've never given any thought to running for political. I did work in the mayor's office in D.C. for a number of years in economic development.
All right.
So that was fun, but it also let me know that I didn't want to run.
Well, now somebody out there's got to do it.
They do.
Somebody's got to do it.
We got to get a bench.
Yes.
Get a bench. You know, we got to get some young people who are raring to bring this place back. We've lost over half the population in the last 3 or 4 decades, you know. And it's because there is no vision for creating. You don't have to be huge to be creative.
Right.
You know, this could be the next dog show capital of the world or something. But we have to be passionate about something other than putting fast food joints on the river.
Right.
So, you know.
That's not progress.
No, it's not.
I love everybody posts on what would be great businesses to come, and everybody talks about Olive Garden. Olive Garden comes because the median income of households goes up. Yeah. That's how Olive Garden gets here.
We don't have a market share for Olive Garden right now.
Well, and that's, you know, I'd like your thoughts, and we'll start drawing to a close because, you know, it's been a minute. We've been on about an hour now, and I've enjoyed the conversation. But you're talking about the mega site, and ever since I've been around this community, it's just this sense in the conversation about how we've got to get some great white savior industry that's going to come in here and save our community. And I think it's been very clear through a lot of this. Number one, we've got good businesses that are doing some things like Choice Fab and I'll say it, a number of these guys that have come together to put an investment plan together into this property at the airport. Who in their right mind that is a big industry company would really want to come set up shop in a community that seems to be as dysfunctional as ours is? And it seems like the first place we need to really focus on is building from within.
Exactly.
And once we actually start functioning that way, have the vision, set it up so that people can succeed, the folks from outside are gonna, they're gonna start showing up. They're gonna start showing the interest. So any thoughts on that? Should we give up on the great hopes?
Well, no, never give up. I'm always optimistic, but I'm optimistic with a plan. We have got to find the human core so that we can come together outside of an emergency. It's an
Right.
emergency with that the rendering and
Yeah.
with the water and all of
Yep.
that. Those are emergency situations. But where do we develop a plan that looks down the road that says that children are reading in this community by 3, not by the 3rd grade? How do we get to a place where we have young people working in their own franchise and developing robotics to the extent that some of that is happening,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not happening at the level where we're reaching enough kids.
Right.
The reading level is just something awful, and it's not the fault of the superintendent. People have to come to the table and take control of their children and be accountable. That's part of the problem. But then we only invest in football. I'm not anti-football,
Mm-hmm.
but I am anti being a football fanatic. When football, only 2 or 3 of the whole team out of the last 7, 8 years will go anywhere close to professional football money. We have got to get back to recognizing that our kids need opportunities other than sports opportunities.
Right.
Give them something. Let them play tennis. Let them do some of these other things, softball teams, and get them. There should be more recreation than football and basketball in a community this size. Baseball over there at the Coliseum.
Yeah. Well, we've got some soccer going on. We're a soccer family at my house, but it's yes. We're certainly not looking at it as that's the gateway to get my daughter a scholarship. Although I've heard if you've got girls, getting them into golf is actually a pretty good way to get them a college scholarship. But yeah, I hear your point.
The question you ask is that if we don't ever sit down together at a meal or at a picnic or something where you get to know, maybe not the inner core of the individual, but where you get to know what they look like and what they sound like. And when you begin to realize that they are no more or less human than you, then we can let down some of the shields and begin to talk for real about how we move Gaston forward and quit lying about it being the city of champions, because it's not. It hadn't been for about 4 decades. Quit lying about Gaston, the great Gaston. It's not. I mean, but I want it to be.
Right.
Just saying it so doesn't make it so.
Right. It certainly can be. And yes. I think we've seen, at least in the opposition group and a lot of the folks that have been very involved in fighting this rendering plant, we've got a lot of really good people in this community.
There are.
And, as pessimistic as it can sound on where we're at, at the core, we had a group of ladies going out in the middle of a thunderstorm to put signs in folks' yards. That's on their own, their own time. They're not getting paid to do that. The list goes on. The people that have done research, it's been really cool to see through this whole process. So how do we get, where do we go? What do we do to sit down and have these conversations and to start moving down this path, or the right path?
I think you're doing a great job now. You guys were over at Mount Pilgrim, and that was different. We're planning another one of those meetings over in the East Gaston area. I mean, when you show up for your neighbors, even though they don't live next door to you,
right?
You give them the opportunity to see that you care. And caring is sharing knowledge and ideas and vision. If there's a little child over there in East Gaston that's denied an opportunity and he chooses to throw a rock through a window because he was denied that opportunity because he was a little black boy, then we have missed the boat. all children should be put into the same category of precious resources, and we just
Yeah.
haven't done
Well, well, I will promise you this, at least from me personally and from Advanced Etowah, we're going to do our best to be a venue to provide information. Um, Obviously, on the rendering plant, we have chosen a side,
that. Right.
and I've said multiple times that this is an issue that it's 98% versus 2%. This is the easiest issue that we as a community should ever face. Everything else is going to get harder and harder and harder.
It will.
And certainly when we got together, this concept of Advanced Etowah and creating a 501c3, like none of that existed. But we saw this has, as you said earlier, this is highlighted. This has become the catalyst to open a lot of these discussions. And so our goal is to continue to provide those discussions. And, I want to figure out how do we keep more people informed of what's going on, because I genuinely think that, from what I have seen, there are a lot of people that just don't know because they're not told. It's not necessarily that they don't want to know. If there's a call to action and something to help, I mean, I know when back in December, when they were taking up food through this whole process, we had folks showing up for a protest with trucks full, cars full of canned goods and all sorts of food and stuff like that. And it just ask. And you just got to ask enough people. So that's my pledge to you and my promises. I definitely I want to continue figuring out how do we keep the conversation going, and how do we provide a venue for people to have that and to be informed, and to be knowledgeable about what's going on with all those millions of dollars that they've got. I've learned a ton from talking with Christy and the other lawyers about just the legal side of how this community works, which is, and it's mind boggling how many people, how many other people have been interested in that. Right. So
it's a curiosity. And let me say this before we go. Deconstruct the budget. Sit down and get with a group of people and look at this budget to see where the money goes. I know it goes to take care of municipal functions, but where does the money go? How many supervisors does the department, the garbage people need? How many levels of supervision do you need in that department? And how many folk are on that longevity pay and that kind of stuff? And then you can begin to see how city budgets are used to prop up people as opposed to do the will that it should do for the people. And also remember, we have an election coming up. Some of those folk need to go. I would say most of them need to go.
Yep.
And that's nothing against them.
Mm-hmm.
They've had their time. They've wasted it. And we need to see them say bye-bye.
Well, that's well said. And guys, if you're good with numbers, if you like diving into that kind of stuff, if you're particularly an accountant or a bookkeeper, or you just like spreadsheets, I'd encourage you and let us know whatever we can help to get you the documents if you want to go through and put some of that stuff together. We're chipping away at making the website better, more informative. We just did an overhaul. We've got a better team than me. I started our initial website and just trying to throw stuff together, and now it's been better thought through. So that may be a great thing that we could get on there to kind of diagram and spell out exactly where all the tax dollars go. And eventually, it's not just Gadsden. We need to be looking at all the municipalities, because the reality is that countywide, there's a lot of money wasted on duplication of effort. 100,000 people. Do we need whatever we have, 11, 12, 13 municipalities,
right. Exactly.
Managing that? But yeah, so if you guys are interested in helping out with that, definitely something that would be helpful. There's only so much time that some of us have. Yeah, I'll definitely take a dig, a deep dive into that. So, well, thank you, sir, so
Thank you.
much for coming over here, and I appreciate your time on a Thursday night.
Good time spent.
And guys, so WMGJ, is there where can folks go on the web to?
It's 1240
Okay,
Magic 1240
okay,
AM. We're running 24/7,
okay.
and all across the world, and
Are
you
you?
can catch it.
Do you guys record your shows?
We record only the talk shows.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. I got 8 years of shows, and so I've gone back to where I first started talking about the water pollution problem,
okay,
and so to get myself educated, we were the first radio station in this community to bring on the doctor from the health department about COVID.
okay.
February the 2nd, I think it was, of 2020, when it still wasn't known whether it was airborne or not.
Gotcha.
So, we
Well,
stay ahead of things.
if you've got those audio files, if you got a website that you can hang those audio files, or if you need some help with figuring out how to make that happen, I think we probably have got folks that would love to go back and listen, and certainly moving forward.
Okay.
Because I mean, not to say don't listen to the radio. I just know for a lot of folks, that's
It's not a good time.
it's always there's never a perfect solution, but I know there's plenty of folks that would. So we can figure out how to do that, and make it so that everybody, folks that work out of town and all that kind of stuff. And we've got a lot of folks that grew up in Gadsden and are interested in living in Mississippi and New York and all over the place, South Carolina, that have been very involved in the group, and I'm sure would love to hear everything. So, well, guys, thank y'all so much for hanging in there tonight, and hope you got something out of this. I know I learned a lot. Appreciate the questions, and guys, keep the fight, keep the faith. We've got a long way to go, and we're starting to definitely realize, from Advanced Etowah's perspective, this is a 3-5 year longer process that we've got to be involved in, and so we appreciate everything that you guys are doing.